And the results are in. For those not in the know, over this weekend we've had two fairly large competitive Lorcana tournaments playing Core Constructed using the new Winterspell cards. Firstly, DLC Melbourne with 418 players, won by Dylan Leduc, also known as Mostar, playing Dogs, and Fear White, also known as Miss Lorcana, taking down a 237 player Leicester CCQ playing Purple Steel. Congratulations to both players. And of course, with two large tournaments down, we have a much better insight into what this Winterspell metagame is going to look like. So, I thought it would be a good time to do a metagame check-in as to the effects on Winterspell on Core Constructed. I was actually planning to do one last week before the events, but turns out, personal life and just sheer laziness got in the way, so we might as well do it with the benefit of tournament data. So before the tournaments, this was where I saw what the metagame was as last week. The known popular decks that were being played in Winterspell, categorized based on their speed, under aggro, midrange and control, with the faster deck being on top. From my knowledge of the various matchups and from my own play, I thought that this was going to be a classic metagame where mid-range beats aggro, control beats mid-range, and aggro beats control. Basically, the slightly larger deck beats the smaller deck, up to a point where the deck gets too slow such that the aggro decks start coming back into the picture. Further, I thought that the three main key decks that were going to be present in this early Winterspell metagame were going to be Dogs, Blurple, and Amber Sapphire Control. I saw Blurple, the king of the mid-range, as the most stable of these decks, with the capacity to be able to beat both aggro and control, the tools to be able to do so, and of course it dominates the mid-range. King of the mid-range after all. And for Dogs and Amber Sapphire, I saw them as their top choices for their respective speeds. So Dogs is the best of the aggro, and Amber Sapphire would stand out as the best of the control decks. With the benefit of hindsight with tournament data, was I right? Well, yes and no. If we look at the data from the tournaments, prepared by yours truly, we see that Blurple was and continues to be the boogeyman of the format, being the most played deck in both tournaments and boasting an above average conversion rate. In other words, there was a bigger percentage of Blurple at the top tables after having made top cut than at the start of the tournament. And looking at the deck, it's obvious why, right? Everybody already knows. It has strong one-cost characters that can challenge smaller things. It has some anti-aggro cards with Cheshire Cat and Elsa that will also be good in mid-range battles. It has a good removal suite, especially now with the addition of Let It Go, on top of Into the Unknown, Hades, Sven, for those playing them, that's good against both fast and slow decks. And it also has great value cards. Genie, Dumbo, Hades, Demona, Junior Witcher Guidebook draws a whole bunch of cards. Just the normal, unstoppable Blurple engine that we've come to know and love? Hate? Up to you, I guess. The second most played deck was another holdover from pre-Winterspell metagame, Purple Steel. But to my surprise, it was actually a fairly winning deck as well, with a fairly decent conversion rate. I thought that it would suffer for being Blurple's faster, but ultimately slightly smaller brother, but it turns out Winterspell actually brought Purple Steel many new tools. If we look at Fear White's CCQ winning deck list, we can see new additions like Christopher Robin, Pocahontas, Genie 3, do you see a theme? These cards give the deck a much faster clock to close out games. And Purple Steel also gets the benefit of Angel to help against aggro, in other words Dogs, and use its cards before and after Doc and Demona in a very ink-efficient way. But the tournament data showed one clear king of the roost, king of the metagame in this early Winterspell, and it is Dogs. Oh, saying that makes me sick. So Dogs won DLC Melbourne and posted an insane conversion rate in both the tournaments. And if we take the data for both tournaments together, it had the highest conversion rate by far. And if we look at the DLC winning Dogs deck list, we can see it only has two what looks like fairly humble but actually incredibly powerful additions to the deck from Winterspell. It gains Grandmother Willow, which acts as a 2-cost subsidizer to Tramp, which is just obscenely good. You can almost always get Tramp out on turn 3. And Nani, which gives the deck the ability to grind harder in matchups where your opponent is clearing your stuff. Of course, the winning deck abandoned the stage package because that's a little slow and a little unreliable. Instead went back to good old Lady. The Lady shift line is great, and even if you don't shift it, it's also a threat that's able to get 2 cards back in your hand, help you grind longer in matchups where things aren't looking so good. Other overperformers were Sapphire Emerald, playing basically again a set 10 deck. If we look at Ed Chiu's list, it was basically that save for cutting, develop your brain for the reprint song, strike a good match, and changing Bend to My Will for ink geysers, which would help against Blurple and possibly Amber Sapphire. As far as underperformers go, the most apparent one is Sapphire Steel, which, if anyone's following the metagame or been playing since set 10, is not really a surprise. There was quite a lot of hype coming into the deck because of the addition of Pete. You can do the whole ally thing, but ultimately it doesn't matter. This deck just gets mauled by Blurple. You just can't deal with the evasives. What is perhaps more notable is the hyped up deck Amber Sapphire. I myself hyped it up on this channel. Likely because of the aggression from Purple Steel and also Dogs, they might be slightly too fast and also too refilling the hand grindy for Amber Sapphire to deal with Raging Storms. And according to top players like DKP, it even has a bad Blurple matchup as well. Though from my own testing, I really can't see how, but maybe there's a certain way to play it. Maybe it's time to buy his Metafire, huh? And of course, my boy, Ruby Sapphire. I didn't even include it in data because it was so little played and so underperforming, like crazy. However, looking through the deck list, I didn't really see that many Wreck-It Ralphs. I think they were playing more of the usual Maui Half Shark version that doesn't fare so well. And unfortunately, I'm sad to say, the Ralph version that I've been playing doesn't really have a great Blurple matchup, but still continues to do well against Dogs and also Purple Steel. So there is hope for it yet, but the hope is getting dim. So where do we go from here? Well, it appears we have a big 4 in this metagame, and it's the same big 4 as before Winterspell came up. Very unfortunate. I think this big 4 is firmly established, with each slightly slower deck beating the previous one. So Purple Steel beats Dogs, Blurple beats Purple Steel, though I heard the matchup is closer than you might think, but in general, that should be the case. Emerald Sapphire beats Blurple, and of course, Blurple and Emerald Sapphire might be too slow to be able to combat Dogs effectively. With this kind of aggro mid-range control loop going on, we are likely going to be in a cyclical metagame with these 4 decks, with them arriving in different proportions to each tournament coming up, depending on what people think are going to be the most played ones, until something comes up that can break up this 4 deck chain that they have going on amongst themselves, because ultimately these 4 decks might be the best versions of their respective speed places within the metagame. In general, I think that any tech tier 2 choice that wants to make its way into the metagame to break up the big 4 has to be good against Blurple, because it is basically going to be the most played deck, I think, or one of the top 2 most played decks in every tournament going forward. The cards have been around since set 9, it's very consistent, it's not incredibly difficult to start getting in to try and pilot, and it feels like it has game against all corners of the metagame, which is always favoured by a lot of players, so you gotta try and be able to beat Blurple if you want your deck to stick. But enough theoreticals, what do I think might be able to form a solid tier 2? Well, I think, again, Amber Sapphire is not going to go gently into the good night. Perhaps the current list may have some struggles, but at its core, the deck's game plan is good against Blurple's game plan. I think the list might need some more fine-tuning, but the bones of a strong contender are there to dominate control decks from Blurple upward. It might struggle downwards, but if metagames are cyclical and you can catch the window where Blurple and control deck upwards are the ones that are going to be good, Amber Sapphire might be your pick. But we need to start getting to tuning those lists and understanding its matchups. 2 more possible contenders are Emerald Amethyst, which is always going to pose a problem for slower decks because of the presence of Gogo Tamago. It's able to, gain enough lore early, gain enough value grinding out through the Amethyst cards, and then close the game out with direct lore gain. And the deck also has gained the benefit of Genie 3 as well as a boost package that some people have been playing, which is able to get it a lot of value and also a lot of lore. Another contender is Amber Amethyst, which actually did pretty well in the Leicester CCQ. Just as the Amethyst deck that has Horseman Strikes against the other Amethyst decks, it also gains the benefit of Grandmother Willow, which they're now playing over Lantern because it's a early quester as well. Some lists have also been taking advantage of the Amber Sapphire tech, the Black Cauldron, and playing some number of copies of Raging Storm to be able to reset the board when things get too dire, because Amethyst does have certain board states that are very difficult for it to deal with. So that's also possibly a contender as well. And lastly, my pet deck, my boy. I might be biased, but I continue to love Ruby Sapphire against Dogs and against Purple Steel. Blurple and up might be a bit of an issue, so the deck is a bit of a meta call. I'm currently working on trying to get the Blurple matchup better, but if you face a lot of aggro, especially Dogs, I think this deck just crushes it if you play carefully and you play well. But am I hoping against hope? I hope not. I want there to be something else that's able to break up these 4 decks. If not, you know, these decks have been around since set 10. Just with the addition of more cards, they only made them more powerful. If we have at least one more deck that's able to kind of get in there, then things might get a bit more exciting because that opens up more metagame space for everybody else. If not, we're gonna be in for another boring season, boys. So that's that. Apologies for a quick one. It's been a rough 2 weeks for me personally. I'm trying to get another video out this week to make up for it. Hopefully an improving technical play since we have a lot of tournament footage, but we shall see. If you like this content, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for all the support and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!